Hey, my name's Brett, and this presentation and video is about developer roles and levels, explaining them. It's going to cover everything from the full stack job title to front end, DevOps, and everything in between. I think when you're getting started as a software engineer, it can be a little confusing as to what the different roles do and what the different levels mean. All of this is based on my own experience, which is really important to share. This is not going to be exactly true at every single organization. I mean, it's really going to vary, but these are some common threads throughout. A little bit about me: I've been doing software development for 15 years, started doing it for fun when I was a teenager, and just kept at it. I've been doing it professionally for over 10 years, and I've sort of gone through all these different levels and yeah, have some thoughts and insights to them that I thought might be worth sharing. So I'm going to focus mostly on web application developers, but a lot of this would apply to Android and iOS app developers and even like Mac and Windows and Linux operating system developers, people building apps. But here are the four main roles I'd say when you have the web for web application developers. And I like to share them, or I like to think about them as if there are different attributes that are at different levels, almost like a Dungeons and Dragons or like a video game character sheet, which helps me visualize the different roles. And I'll go into more depth about each of these, but just to explain these attributes, which you'll see each of these have, the full stack, front end, back end, and DevOps have. The back end skills are when the data is being modeled. So representing things like users, if it's an e-commerce platform, representing things like products and orders, and if it's a blog, maybe it's like blog posts and users and comments and whatever the data model is, which is usually driven by the business needs. That'll be built with collaboration and front end skills too, but generally setting up the data model, storing the data in the database, building out APIs, or handling the code that renders the front end. So that's sort of gluing together the front end with the back end, and processing data in the background, which is like a huge aspect of back end development. Sometimes sending emails. Maybe the front end skills would be the content and the look and style of the emails, but the logic of when to send an email is what I would call a back end concern. You have the front end, which is the presentation in and the user experience of how people interface with the app. That would be markup, which is HTML, be styles, CSS, interaction, which would be JavaScript. That's sort of where you get in React and Angular and the different front end libraries and frameworks and web components. Interfacing with the API and maybe storing the data or caching it, or how the data is stored on the client side. I guess front end would also be called client side. And then really polishing the experience, styling it, making it responsive for different devices, front end concerns. And you have ops, which is sort of how it all works. And then maybe that's more of a back end concern, I would say ops is, but sometimes it influences the front end, which is where the applications are hosted, how they're deployed, so how you get the code from your computer or source code management like GitHub out to the server so that it runs. You've got things like logging and key pieces of infrastructure like Redis and Memcached, and your database, making sure that database have backups and everything there is secure. It's this kind of whole realm of operations and infrastructure. And so that's this kind of overview of the attributes. Now let's dig into each role. So full stack, which I think I see more and more often, is a pretty common role. I'd say it's a well-rounded developer who is capable of doing back-end and front-end work. It's a lot. Like there's a really wide surface area of what is important here, and like what a full stack developer can do. So from writing style sheets to having automated tests on the back end for when an email is sent, right? There's this huge breadth of what that role could be responsible for. And sometimes I think that can be a little unrealistic, and it takes a long time to have that wide breadth of skills. But I think with that wide surface area, there's lots of ability to grow and specialize, which I'll talk about more later. Some ideas of like how you could specialize or some tendencies that I see come out. But yeah, full stack means you're working on the front end, the back end, client side, server side. And maybe you know a little bit about ops, and like you have to be able to deploy the application. Sometimes maybe you need to debug it. Maybe you need to log into a server and adjust some things. But or maybe it's hosted on something like Heroku, where a lot of that is abstracted away by the hosting service. But you still need to have an understanding, I think, generally of Linux and the hosting infrastructure and how it's all glued together, even just a little bit. And I think that's an area you could specialize in growing. Front end would be focused on the user experience. Got to know a little bit of back end, just in terms of how the API works. You got to know where the application's hosted and some of the more technical aspects of how it all works together, how it's all orchestrated. But generally, a front end developer is going to work with a back end developer, and they'll split those full stack responsibilities. And what you get with those split responsibilities is, I think, a deeper knowledge and more confidence and ability to work quicker and foresight into common issues. So when you have this front end specialty, I think you, when you collaborate with someone else, you have a nice, like, clear split of responsibilities. And front end devs, like people who are specifically front end devs, like as a full stack developer, I work with front end devs at various times in my career, and they just like blow me away in their ability to build these amazing experiences and be up to date with the latest technologies and techniques. And I think that's something you get with this specialty and having less concern with the back end and operations. Now, when you get the back end, this is a person who's generally going to be more focused on the database and the data layer, making sure that those needs are being met and the data is modeled appropriately, and then really reacting to different user inputs on the back end. So saving data, updating data, destroying data, migrating it, making sure there's proper business logic for what to do when a certain form is submitted, those sorts of things. That is the back-end focus, and building out APIs that the front end would consume. And those APIs, they might be HTTP APIs that serve JSON. It could be a GraphQL API. It could be even like an API in a loose sense of the word, where the data is rendered in a server-side rendered app, and it's not communicated, like maybe they're closer together, but then the markup and the interactions are all being handled by the front-end developer. So also, a backend developer might be doing some tooling, but that also might be more DevOps too. But there might be some need to do some like focused backend coding, where you're like processing images or doing things like that. Then you have DevOps, which sometimes you just have operations people, and they're their own team or own person, and they purely focus on the operations. But sometimes I'll use that term DevOps interchangeably, where like it's really helpful to have a person who knows about the back end and the front end, so how it all works. Like if it's a Ruby on Rails app, it's important that they understand Ruby and how Rails works, how assets are precompiled so that they can get deployed to the CDN and be accessed, how routing and networking work. Usually responsible for uptime, and sometimes that goes in conjunction with the other developers, but like being able to respond to DDoS attacks or like big upswings in traffic and monitoring the health of the applications, I think is a DevOps concern, which is cool. And that's like maybe you're working more with Docker and Kubernetes and less with building features in the app. So like full stack front end, back end people are going to be focused on building and shipping features, where DevOps is going to be more focused on the operations of all of the software and how it's orchestrated. So there's like a difference, I think, in the focus of work there, but generally that's it. And then there's collaboration between all of those different people, and teams might have different configurations of those developers. Let's talk about levels next, and then we'll go back to some specialties. So I'd say there's generally, and we'll focus on the full stack role because I think it's a nice like balanced role that we can walk through these, but I'd say there's generally 4 roles: junior, intermediate, senior, and principal. Maybe there are some more down the line, especially as the career and the industry matures, these levels like keep expanding. But let's dig into each of them. So a junior developer is going to be someone who's just getting started. It's likely their first job. Maybe they're coming out of school and university or some kind of coding boot camp. Maybe they are really passionate about it and learned on their own through a variety of resources. But this is going to be their first job. And I think this person is helpful in that they're able to contribute, but they need a lot of help and support. And so it's this sort of investment in taking the time, supporting them, helping them grow, and they become this really valuable part of the team, like 5 years down the line or whatever. Not to say that they're not valuable at the get-go, but I think it's just the nature of experience is that a more junior developer is going to work a little slower, going to need some more guidance. But I think within that role, there's the ability to, like, with someone coming to a job without like a ton of experience, I think there's the ability to really support them and prop them up and kind of like mold them into the kind of developer they want to be, and that works with the team really well. So, and if a company wants to have a more experienced workforce, it's helpful to like have someone ascend skill-wise through the organization. And it's like you got to start somewhere, right? So I don't think it's like a bad thing to be a junior developer or whatever. It's just it's like is the reality. And I remember when I was starting out and just sort of like I remember my first job, and you sort of soak up everything, and it's a really wonderful and fun time if you're interested in the aspects of programming and everything that goes with it. I think more junior developers, they're not thinking too much about the big picture technically, still getting their bearings on how things work, and soon enough they'll level up and become an intermediate developer. This is someone I generally think of has 2 to 5 years experience. Maybe they've stayed at the same company in that time, maybe they've had a couple different jobs. They can generally take a task and work on it from start to finish, but we'll need some guidance, maybe on how things should set up or the expectations, or maybe some of the tricky parts they might need some support with. Maybe the code they're writing isn't the most performant, but it's functional. And I think that's a more senior and advanced aspect, which is like improving performance. Intermediate devs might overlook edge cases or maybe some security aspects that will hopefully be caught by more skilled team members or more like experienced team members through code review and other processes like pair programming. And I think when you're an intermediate dev, you have a grasp of how things work, and maybe you're starting to think about the big picture and how things could evolve, but you still got a lot on your plate to focus on the bread and butter of the work, which I think like as a full stack dev would be HTML, CSS, JavaScript, API in the back end, and sort of like working with designers, collaborating. There's a lot to focus on. And then once you get your bearings on that, I think you then become a senior developer. So you have like 5 to 10 years experience, maybe more. And this is like a really like stable role, I'd say, where you could you get it and then you could just be the senior dev. And yeah, there's a bit of mentoring. You're catching performance and security issues and edge cases before they ship because you've done it before, right? Like as an intermediate dev, quite a lot of the work you're doing could be the first time you've done it. But as a senior dev, it's pretty rare that you're thrown into something where you just have no idea what to do. And that's what comes with the experience. So you're writing higher quality code and you're working pretty quickly. You're helping out the intermediate and junior devs. And you're also starting to pick up a sort of like things that you see that you know need to happen, but maybe aren't prioritized like in the work stream. So maybe like updating dependencies, like maybe a new version of Ruby came out and you want to update that. You're starting to have conversations with like leaders and the rest of the team about how the technology could evolve and processes and practices and sort of setting the the helping like set and not enforce isn't the right word, but like support the way the team works and the values that the team has. So you're kind of thinking at that level. And a senior developer is able to take something from start to finish pretty quickly, like more quickly than an intermediate or junior developer, and get it released and have it be solid, and have like confidence with releasing things. So that's senior. And then I think from there you kind of have these like mix of roles. I'd call it principal in this, but it also might be like a team lead, it might be a staff engineer, and maybe some of those like more experienced roles have different amounts of leadership and project and product management compared to developing. But this is someone who's been doing it for 10 or more years, I'd say. They're a technical leader, so they're setting the like tone of how the team works and like technology decisions, architecture, helping with data modeling and what's in the data modeling with the database. They're thinking about performance and scalability and security, and they're also thinking about the user experience too at the end. So there's like business needs, technical needs, customer needs, and they're mentoring all the teammates. But since it's something that they've been doing for 10 or more years, they have confidence in it and are able to work through all of that wide breadth of things to help support people. And I think challenges at this role are like finding the balance between coding things and supporting people, and it's a new sort of challenge. And I don't think this person would necessarily be a people manager. Like, I don't know if they would have people report to them and they'd be managing them, but they'd still be helping mentor people. I think management is this sort of separate track that is explicitly about like having one-on-ones and maybe like assigning work or discussing work and figuring it out, where like a principal engineer in my mind is just like a highly skilled individual contributor who's also able to collaborate. And then so that's like an overview of the different levels. Generally, that's really going to vary from place to place, but I hope that gives a sense of how they differentiate. And I'll talk more later about how you can level up and different ways and thoughts about that. But let's talk about specialties, specifically specialties within the full stack job title, because even if you have a team of full stack developers, there's still going to be specialties, because every single person on the team is going to have different past experiences and ways of working and views of the world and like personal interests and a whole variety, right? Everyone's bringing something different to the table, which I think is a really beautiful thing of software development and just working in general. And so it's about taking those different specialties and skills and abilities and supporting one another. And I think about, I'll talk about 4 different specialties. So the first is what I think of as the whiz kid. This is a person you work with who just seems like they can code anything. They're highly skilled. They love a challenge, like a really hard problem, and they regularly do things where you're just like, wow, that's incredible. I'm not sure if I could do that, or it would take me a long time to do it. And this is a person you might reach out to for help on how to do things like a different way or an alternate way. And they're just like really incredible. This person also might not have the best communication skills or organization skills. So then it's up, that's something they can grow in, but it's also something that the team can help support them with and kind of make the most of those strengths. I've worked with a bunch of people like this, and they kind of just like, I don't know, I'm always in awe of it because they have these technical skills that are really important. There's this role I think of as the organizer, which I think I fall into, where I'm skilled as a backend and front-end developer, know a little bit about ops, but I'm able to really organize the work and rally the team and take a project from start to finish with confidence and like calmness and ship it and communicate outwardly to stakeholders and encourage the team to do the same. So this role is really valuable, right? Where if an organizer works with a whiz kid, and these names are silly and they're supposed to be silly, but if an organizer works with a whiz kid, that's like a really great combination, because the whiz kid can help work through the challenging parts and help teach the organizer things, and the organizer can help with the leadership and communication aspects, and it's like a really valuable role. And then you have a front-end fanatic, which maybe they're technically a full-stack developer, but they're just specialty is in the front end. Those people totally exist. Maybe they started on the front end and picked up back-end skills along the way. And this is a person who I view, they take the visual experience and the user experience the extra mile. They really care about how it's presented and how it is on different screens and the accessibility, and they're just like really up to date with the front end. And they're capable of working and interfacing with the back end and making changes there, but you just know they're gonna like make this great front end experience. And that person pairs really well with the other teammates. And I think there's also this other specialty that I call ops glue, where the person is just really great at the back end, building out APIs. They have a real good understanding of the infrastructure and can help people who are more like work closely with DevOps specific engineers to upgrade dependencies, make sure things work. Maybe they're on call sometimes, and can like respond in an emergency when things go down and help get them back up and react accordingly. So also maybe they really love the tooling of the developer environment and making sure that's a really great and ergonomic experience. So you can have these different specialties, and these are just 4 of them, but and I think of these different skill like levels, they can change, and but this generally covers it, where you have these people who you could put these 4 people together on a team. You'd have a really great unit of a person who's well balanced and leading the team, and then you have a person who's really great at the front end, a person who's focused on the back end, and a person who's able to clear technical hurdles or talk about the architecture and work on really hard problems. And then it's through this full stack umbrella that you can have a balanced team. And maybe you see yourself within some of these, maybe you're interested in some of these, and all of those are really valid and useful on a team. Like there's a place for you on a team, and the trend of wanting all developers to be able to do all the same thing as like a full stack person, I think can be pretty challenging and unrealistic. And I think by embracing these sort of specialties and encouraging them and supporting the growth, you can have this like team that has a variety of skills and supports one another. And then managers and leaders can help configure teams in a way that supports everyone the most. Or like if you had a bunch of back-end people, or people are really like ops glue type people, and they're focused on the back end, but it's like a front-end heavy project, it wouldn't really work so well. So you gotta know the team and know yourself and know your skills and your interests to find that balance. There are definitely more roles and specialties, and sometimes maybe there's like a hybrid designer front-end role, and you'll see like just based on who you work with, those different ones. So if you're just getting started or you're interested in becoming a software developer, I would honestly say start with the front end. I think it's a really great entryway into the field in that it's visual, so you're building things like with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, or maybe you're building an app for iOS or for Android or the desktop. And maybe there's some backend and data components to it, but maybe it's mostly focused on the front end experience. This would be like building a website or customizing a WordPress theme. Like that's where I started, was with WordPress. So there's a little bit of PHP, but a lot of it's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And what's nice is that you're working visually and you're building foundations, and you're kind of like, it's a great entryway. And then from there, you can dive deep into the back end, or you can keep going deeper on the front end. You could get into the operations and the infrastructure. So it's up to you to decide where you want to go from there. But I really think front end is a great place to start and will treat you really well throughout your career, where like coming in as like a junior front end developer, you could focus on building your back end skills and you could become a full stack intermediate dev, or you could keep leveling up as a front end dev, or you could, you got options. But I think front end's a great place to start because of how quickly the feedback is and how you can build a portfolio of websites or web apps you've built that people can see. So I think that is really nice and useful. The best teams I've worked on leverage all those strengths and encourage focused growth to help people level up and support one another. And I think that gets into this topic of like, as a developer, how do you level up? And the first thing is you're just going to learn on a job, like without a doubt. You spend time every day, every work day working on it. You're just going to get better and pick things up and learn. And sometimes you won't even realize it. Like you'll look back and you'll say, like you'll look back after a year or 2 years and you'll think to yourself like, whoa, I learned a ton. And it's really this incredible feeling to reflect and see that you learned a bunch. I love that feeling, and it's such a joyful part of the job. Because of how the industry and technologies are changing, there's a lot to at least keep me interested and keep me engaged with it, which I really love. You can find a mentor internally or externally. So if you're coming in as a junior and intermediate person, or even like as a senior or a principal engineer, there's usually going to be someone who's more experienced than you. This will, if it's a small organization, maybe that's less the case. So maybe you look externally, but internally you might have like a VP of engineering or a CTO or just another engineer that you want to learn from. So then what you could do is you could just set up a recurring meeting with them monthly or quarterly, or go and get lunch together and just ask them questions, talk about things, run ideas by, see what they think. Especially if it's someone you work with regularly, they'll have some insight into how you're working. Maybe they see what you're struggling with or what's challenging you, and they can help give you resources or books or connect you in ways that can really help you. Externally, I think this is where you go to people that are like present in the communities that you're part of. Maybe there are meetups or conferences or people who like make content or whatever online that you can reach out to, and maybe could become a mentor. And there are different mentorship groups. I don't have as much experience with external mentoring, but it seems like a really cool thing if it exists. You can work with your manager to create a growth plan, and that will help hold you accountable and your manager accountable. So if you're a junior engineer and you're like, I really want to level up because you're interested in it, you want to make more money or whatever it is, right? You want to grow your skills, be a more like useful person in the workforce, which is like, a lot of this stuff is like kind of gross, makes me feel a little gross, like the levels and the like getting paid different value, like how different people are valued in the workforce. I think that makes me feel icky, but it's like sort of the reality, and I think it's helpful to talk about the reality and then how you can like work within it. And I think if you have a manager, it's really important to map out how you want to grow and like what your goals are, or where you want to end up, right? So if you have where you are today, you want to be an intermediate dev, talk to your manager about that, say that explicitly, and then map out like some steps or some like metrics or like actionable things to do to get to that point, like attending conferences, reading certain books. There's not really like a test, or there's not these sort of like, oh, you can take this test to know if you're this level or that level, and the levelings will change between different organizations. So it's really about your manager and whoever is able to promote you to define what you need to do and create that growth plan. But I'll talk more about like how you could create your own growth plan too. But work with your manager. That's like super important to this. And that will help you grow, and it'll also help them make sure that they have like enough organization and processes to determine what people's levels are and how people move between the levels. So start that conversation early. You can really intentionally learn skills, and those will help you specialize in things, and you'll learn and grow more quickly. I use Trello. I create a board where I just put books, ideas, conferences, different techniques, different tools, frameworks, libraries, everything. I put them in this Trello board, and I systematically work through each thing one at a time to keep learning and keep my skills fresh. So instead of just like chasing whatever's new on a whim, which sometimes that's fun and enjoyable, and you should just like embrace that type of learning if that's how you want to learn. But I find that there's so many new developments happening in the world of software development that I need to take it, capture it, and then work through it and like focus on the things that don't change. Things like programming fundamentals, things like web components instead of a specific framework, because then those skills will apply elsewhere, even if the frameworks change. So you can be really focused about your learning plans. You can watch screencasts, you can read books, you can go to meetups and conferences, and that will definitely help you accelerate your learning. And those things you learn, you then apply to your work, and it like has benefits for you and it benefits the company. So it's like it's good. It's good in that regard, where it's not just benefiting the company or whatever. Like it really can help you with your skills and abilities and like ability to get a different job somewhere else or whatever. Something that I don't think gets talked about too often, but you can have different phases in your career, and that's like a really, really great thing and worth embracing. You may set out as a junior developer and you say, oh, I want to be a full stack developer, but then 5 years down the line, you end up being an iOS engineer because maybe you find you're really interested in that, or Swift looks cool, and then you fall in love with it. And that sort of thing is going to happen. And you're going to have these phases. And maybe you'll change the key technology. Maybe you'll change a framework, or maybe you'll go and focus on ops for a bit, and then you'll say, I'm actually good on ops. I'm going to go back and focus on another thing. And that's totally okay. And I think there will be needs within your organizations or within your projects that will help. Like there will be opportunities that arise where you can try it, and then you could go and transition out of it. So you have options, and it's all going to help you become a better developer, which I think is important to realize. So having some specialty and some focus doesn't mean that that's the thing you're going to do forever, unless it's the thing you want to do forever. So you have options there. And I think there's quite a bit of latitude within the software engineering profession to focus on things for a long period of time or a short period of time, and those skills will help the other skills that you have too. I hope that helps give you an overview of everything. There are definitely different roles, different levels within the various roles, different specialties then within them. I like to think of them as those Dungeons and Dragons, like video game character sheets, where you have different skills and the teams balance out one another. It's helped me communicate and visualize the variety of roles that exist. And there are other ones too, like support engineers and QA engineers, and different larger organizations are going to have different needs that are very specific. So you have to learn and navigate those yourself. But hope that helps. I know as I've gone through my career, my focuses and specialties have changed, but that sort of covers it all. All right. Thank you very much. Take care.